Inna alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man wala ba'd. My dear brothers and sisters, welcome to this lecture on qualities of top achievers. One thing I realized just now in terms of learning is that it's the topic which makes sense. So any topic that promises money, we get good attendance, alhamdulillah, mashallah. So I think in the future I'm going to announce topics like, for example, how to build a property, real estate database, how real estate, asset base. And then when you come here, I'll talk about the real estate in the Jannah. So inshallah, I think we should see how we announce these topics. If you simply say Jannah and so on, then inshallah, interest is there, but that interest is not translated into action, it seems. So we will go on with that. You know who I am, so you don't need that slide. Now, the thing I want to start with is a quote of mine, where I say that it's not how much you know, but how much you do that makes the critical difference. And that's one thing which is something that we need to keep focused on, which is what do our actions show? And at the end of the day, it's only the actions which will give us the results. I love this quote of Mark Twain. He said, the two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. So I think that's so why do you exist? For what? I think that's a very important thought. When we do vision and core values workshops for organizations, we ask this question to the organization itself and say, why do you exist? What will happen if you don't exist? Who will cry when you die? That's a title of a book, incidentally, not mine, but a very interesting title. Who will cry when you die? Meaning that, not meaning immediate relatives, but meaning who will miss the fact that you are gone? What difference does it make? I think these are important thoughts to keep in mind, because that's what, inshallah, drives our actions and drives what we do with ourselves. Now, before we go into the qualities of top achievers, I thought it would be a good idea to do a snapshot on the world as it exists today. Because unless we see where we are, it's not possible to put things into perspective. So let me begin with that. And why is it important to understand what today is like? Because tomorrow is a derivative of today, and it will be more. Whether it's for better or worse is for us to decide. I submit to you that we live in a world of contrasts, a world that speaks to us in a language of signs. And as we know from a sign is useful only if you can read the sign. What does it mean? What is it pointing to? What is it warning against? What is it promising, and so on? A sign is not just a sign by itself. It's not, for example, a red light on a street is not decoration. It means something. And ignoring it has consequences. Following it has consequences. So these are, and that's the issue with all kinds of signs, whether they are material and physical like traffic lights, or they are symbolic in other ways. And that's why this quote of Neil Gaiman, which in his book American Gods, he says, there's none so blind as those who will not listen. Not those who will not see, but those who will not listen. I say that's interesting. Now, this world, on the one hand, it's a world where basic necessities, if you look at basic necessities, 3 billion, taking the world current population at about 6 or 6.5 billion, that's about 50% of the world, lives on less than $2.50 a day, which is 120 rupees or 150 rupees. Tonight, meaning every night, 1 billion children, 1/5 of the world in terms of children, will go to bed hungry. 22,000 children die every day due to poverty. I'm not talking about disease, I'm not talking about war zones, I'm not talking about children dying for unnatural causes. They die because they are poor. They have nothing to eat. On this planet, 805 million people do not have enough food to eat. More than 750 million lack adequate access to drinking water, clean drinking water. We are talking about absolutely fundamental food and water. Question to you is, in your view, what is a basic necessity? Because what you define as a basic necessity is what we understand as a basic necessities. So I think that's a very important thing for us to keep in mind. Now, you might say that the latest iPhone 6 is a basic necessity. I mean, some people might define it like that, but the world comprises of people who have a very different definition. Number of people in absolute poverty by country, and that's the latest data as on 2015 by Max Rosa, who is a researcher in Oxford. See the country which has the maximum number of people in absolute poverty, and absolute poverty is defined as less than what I mentioned earlier. Absolute poverty in this case is defined as people living on less than 1.25 US dollars a day. Less than 1.25 US dollars a day, which means less than 100 rupees a day. People living on that is defined as absolute poverty. The country which has the maximum number is our country here in India. It's not some African country, it's not the Sahara or sub-Saharan countries, it is this country. India has the maximum number of people living in absolute poverty. The number 2 country after India is Nigeria, and as you can see, Nigeria is like 40% of India. So we are ahead by a very, very big margin. Now I don't know whether you want to use the word ahead for this or some other word, because it's not something nice. We don't want to be ahead in this way, but just not wanting is not sufficient. Thing to do is that this is not just, I'm not just giving you academic data for your consumption. Poverty affects us directly and indirectly. Make no mistake. Make absolutely no mistake. The fact, and I'm not talking theology here. I'm not talking about a responsibility with respect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm talking about material effect of poverty. And how does it affect us? It affects us because of heightened crime. It affects us because that many people who are in absolute poverty are not contributing to the economy. They are not spending there's not a single cent coming out of them to the economy, but they are draining the economy. Believe me, it affects us. It's a huge, huge, huge effect on us directly and indirectly. So even if you don't have a single modicum of iman, it is still in your interest to do whatever you can to alleviate poverty and bring these people up from absolute abject poverty to a place where they can become contributing members of society, because that's the meaning of growing the economy. Growing the economy is not making a bunch of gadgets and stuff which you keep on offering to the same people who buy it again and again. It's to increase the size of the pie by increasing the number of people who come out of absolute abject poverty. Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi was sitting once, and a man came and he stole something and he ran from him. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi ran behind the man. So people said, why are you running behind him? He shouted to the man, he said, don't worry, I have given that to you. Because the people say, what happened? He said, because if he steals it, then he is a thief, then Allah will punish him, so I have given it to him, so he is not a thief. And that's what I want to say to those who are taking photographs of the screen. I have given it to you, you don't have to steal it. You will get a link to this presentation, inshallah. Now, percentage of, and this is from the Planning Commission report of 2008, percentage of workforce receiving skill training. Now, why am I linking this skill training with results of abject poverty? Because the route to out of abject poverty is skill training. It's not education as we like to call it. First of all, what we call education is absolute rubbish. It's not education, but even if it was, getting one of these children a +2 qualification in school, or getting him a so-called engineering degree, makes absolutely no difference to the poverty. He's still poor, he's still starving. The fees that you paid for his school education does him no good whatsoever, because he can't use it and he can't convert that into an income. What will help him no end is if he has a skill that he can sell, meaning that if he's a carpenter, or he's a mason, or he's a plumber, or whatever the skill might be, an IT professional, you call it what you want, but if he has a skill or she has a skill and they can use the skill, then they contribute to the economy, they are able to look after themselves. So entrepreneurship development is the number one priority that we should have, but we do not have. Among the many silly things we do. So my suggestion, which I have made to whoever is willing to listen to me, is to set up vocational training in every single school. So by the time the child graduates out of class 12, he or she has a workable skill with their hands. They do not have to go and stand in a line for a job. They can set up shop and they can earn a living, and that living will be definitely more than 1.25 US dollars a day, which is what they're earning today. So that's the reason I have this slide here. Now, what will it take? Again, numbers. I'm giving you all data because you can't argue against data. I'm giving you. I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm giving you data for you to look at. What will it take? In 1998, the UN estimated that it would take 40 billion US dollars annually to offer basic education, clean water, sanitation, reproductive health, and basic health and nutrition to every person in every developing country. 40 billion US dollars will ensure that nobody goes to bed hungry, that nobody is uneducated, that nobody has dirty drinking water, that nobody has a problem with access to basic health care. 4 basic parameters. There will be no poor people in the world. If you have spent 40 billion in 1998. As on 2015, they did a rehash of the numbers. They said it will take not 40 billion but 58 billion US dollars. While we spend currently 1.4 trillion on weapons. As we say, you buy what you get. You get what you buy, you get what you pay for. You're paying for death, you get death. You want to pay for life, that is an option. Hunger kills. Believe it or not, the World Food Program says the poor are hungry and their hunger traps them in poverty. Hunger is the #1 cause of death in the world, killing more people than HIV, AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis combined. We work for cures for HIV, AIDS, which is a very good thing. We should do that. But how many people are just looking at hunger itself? Hunger alone kills more people than all of this combined. And again, as I mentioned, I want to re-emphasize, we're not talking about war zones, we're not talking about unnatural causes of death. It's just plain poverty. People are dying because they have no food. It's as simple as that. We come to the issue of education. Now, Muslim dropouts percentage, again, this is from the Mishra National Commission for Religious and Linguistic Minorities, Justice Ranganath Mishra's report of 2004. See the numbers. The number of Muslim students who go into primary education is 65%, probably higher than almost any community. 65% go to school, 3% graduate. 3%. Even if you take our demographic numbers in this country at about 12%, that is 3%. 1/4 of the demographic number is people who qualify. Why? Because of poverty. No other reason. They are unable to complete their education because there is no food to eat. You giving them school fees does not help them because they leave the school not because they don't have the money to eat, but because they have to earn money. Not for the fees, they have to earn money to eat. So you are paying the school fee does not help him because he still has to earn to eat. 3%, from 65% to 3%. How on earth are we going to get people into leadership positions in this country if only 3% are graduating? We are not talking about top of the line, we are not talking about what education and so on. This is just basic plain figure, graduation. Grim reality, over 30,000 farmers committed suicide between 2011 and 2013. The governments of the day have a nice way of using words to create fog. They say farmer suicides reported by states as being for agrarian reasons. There's nothing agrarian, it is for financial reasons. They are committing suicide because they are stuck in debt and they are completely despair. So they feel they have no way out, and so they commit suicide. Over 30,000 farmers in just 2 years. And that's why I'm saying happiness doesn't cause suicide, despair does. The Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF's Living Planet Report, as they call it, I like to call it the Dying Planet Report of 2014. They say the number of wild animals in the world has been halved during the last 40 years. 50% of wild animals do not exist anymore. I'm sure there are people in this city who are contributing to some of that by their illegal hunting, but that is a reality. And that's only the ones we counted.